Welcome to PD in 15. This is where we attempt to give you the rundown on one of our more popular sessions in 15 minutes or less. Today's session is Back That Thing Up using evidence to support constructed response. The goals for this particular session are: one, I want you to understand the progression of skills which help students actually develop their ECR and SCR writing skills. And two, I want you to understand the importance of student-generated questions in their development in writing constructed response items, but also comprehension too. So, why did I design this PD? Well, a few years ago, we heard about STAR 2.0 and the redesign, and how everyone was going to be asked to do writing on their assessment, and people contacted us in a frenzy. They were frantic, right? So the STAR redesign said that everybody was going to be required writing to be assessed at all grade levels, and unfortunately, certain grade levels had not been teaching writing up until that point. Now, they wanted a strategy, and they wanted one now. Right? And so it was very difficult for me to try to convince people that you didn't need a strategy. That's not where you start when it comes to effective ECR instruction. So what we had to do was say, hey, I know you want the strategy, and a lot of people went out and bought every ACE and race poster there was, hung them up everywhere, all around the schools, and this is what they went to. But this is not where you start. I'm not saying you can't use these strategies. I'm saying that's not where you start. The truth is this, that SCRs and ECRs, if you want to know where you begin with oral language development, and then you move along this continuum. So this is why I created this particular continuum for teachers, so that they can see that these are some of the prerequisite skills that will actually get you to SCR and ECR writing a little bit more quickly, but you got to start with oral language and students' questioning skills. So I told people in this session, start with oral language. Some weren't convinced yet, and so I had to talk to them about the fact that it's in our standards. We are supposed to be teaching kids to listen actively, ask relevant questions, clarify information, and then just make pertinent comments. That's what we're supposed to be teaching kids. But I never saw that particular standard up on the board. We're also supposed to be teaching students to work collaboratively with others, to engage in meaningful discourse, to participate in student-led discussions, and discuss and write about the explicit and implicit meaning of text. So, I use these 4 questions as an illustrative example of how important it is for us to respond in complete sentences. Because what I'm saying is, if your students aren't thinking in complete sentences, if they can't speak in a complete sentence, then you better believe they're not going to be able to write in complete sentences. And so people love telling me that these kids write the way they talk. And so my response to that is, then make them talk the way you want them to write during your academic discourse. And so I use these 4 questions to illustrate that example. So you say to your students, guys, from now on, we're going to respond to every question in a complete sentence. And here's why. It's going to contribute to our clarity. And take a look at these 4 questions. I want you to pick one of these questions to answer in your mind. Think of the 1 or 2 words that answers it, right? And when you do, on the count of 3, I want you to shout out your 1 or 2 words that answers your question. So all the kids do this. I count to 3, they shout out their responses, and then I say, you all did exactly what I asked you to do, but because no one responded in complete sentences, then there is no clarity. And if we've got to be clear anywhere, it's in ELAR, it's when we write. We have got to be clear, because the truth is, the answer to any one of these questions could have been pizza. Because if you're like me, growing up, large family, my mom wouldn't let us eat pizza because she wasn't about to order 6 or 7 pizzas for herself, my dad, and the 5 daughters that they had, right? So I never was able to eat pizza growing up. We ate whatever came out of the kitchen. So that is just an illustrated example. And so if you really want your kids to do well or to do better with writing, go ahead and start having them respond in complete sentences. It just trains them how to turn a question into a statement, and it helps with that oral language development, which eventually will help with the writing. Then I said, you need to practice more with student questioning. And so we know that good readers ask questions. And in strand 2 of our standards here in Texas, it tells us that we should be teaching kids to generate questions about a text before, during, and after reading to deepen their understanding and to gain information. And we should also be teaching questioning as a way for students to actually monitor their comprehension. It's a great way, a great easy way for students to monitor their comprehension. So research also supports this. Research shows us that students who generate questions are going to do better when it comes to comprehension. They're going to outperform students who have not been taught to do that as they read. And if we want students to ask better questions and become better questioners, especially when they're reading, then we've got to demonstrate genuine questions before, during, and after for our kids. We've got to model and give them feedback on their questions that they ask. We've got to give them interesting materials to read, and then we've got to monitor their use of those questions, like I say, and give them feedback so that they understand these are great questions. These questions take us deeper into the text because that's what we want. So then in this particular training, we're going to go through a demonstration lesson for the importance of questioning, and I want to show you how using just student questioning can deepen their understanding and help them understand a text. So as you see here, these are my grade level objectives. Notice I have more than one objective because in ELAR, rarely are we ever going to be doing just one thing. And so I talk to the students that this is a text that we're going to be reading. We're going to be reading a text called Así. And so we're going to do what good readers do and make our predictions, but we're going to do it through questioning. So one thing that I'm wondering before I start reading this text is Así a person's name? Another question that I have is this the same as when my Spanish-speaking friends say así, because it sounds like the same word? And then, what is the significance of the title Así? I know that as a good reader, the title always has some meaning, and I should be trying to figure that out. Now, I would have the students then turn and they would write down 2 questions that they have before we start reading and then share with their AB partners. Okay, once we've done that, it's time for us to start listening to the author, Claudia Castro Luna, read parts of this poem, and then I'm going to stop this text in various places and ask the students to write questions. So let's just look at this first part.
My name is Claudia Castro Luna, and I am the Washington State Poet Laureate. Así. This is the city that saw the raw mass of me, the quick and slow of me, the I'm afraid and I can't of me, the it's beyond side of me. This is the place that showed me I fit, I take space.
So we're going to stop right there at I take space right there in the middle of line 4. And then I'm going to have the students just ask 2 more questions. So they would put down 2 questions and they would label those questions 3 and 4 on their form. And then let's talk about some of the questions that I've received from students. Like they might ask, what city is this? What does raw mass of me mean? What was the speaker afraid of? What does the quick and slow of me mean, right? So these are some of the things that the students might ask. Why does the author repeat of me in the text or in this section? So I want to show you that all of these would be really great questions to ask. All of these questions would take you deeper into the text and they have you thinking about the text. So the first time, all they do is just share their questions. All right, once we're ready to move on, we'll listen to the next part of the text.
The city, let me be. My hair really is that
side of me. Its shaft and electric tendril vibrating its own humming life, the untamable side of me. See how the world dances above my eyebrows?
So we stop right there at eyebrows, and this time they would write down their questions, share their questions with their partners. And then this time I would say, and now what I want you to do is, if there is evidence in the text to support an answer, I want you guys to have a discussion and attempt to answer each other's questions. And so one question that I often get on that section of text is, what does "see how the world dances above my eyebrows" means? Right? And so sometimes the two most common interpretations we get are, maybe it's the author's or the speaker's thoughts. And then another interpretation that we get is, she is saying that the world is dancing above her eyebrows. So her big hair that she was talking about here. This is kind of like a celebration of her hair and its uniqueness and its size. And so I say to the students, so we have two different interpretations here. Which one do we have the most evidence to support at this point? Is it her thoughts, or is it her hair that she's kind of speaking about here? And then everyone understands that it's her hair, because if you don't remember, a few years ago, one of the authors of one of the poems that was used on the STAR test actually read the questions that were created around her poem, and she said, well, that's not really what I was thinking, or I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. And so we have to show kids or train kids that we're going to pick the answer that has the most evidence to support it, because we aren't inside of the author's head. And so the test creators are just writing questions that can be answered with evidence from the text. Now, we would go through that same process for this poem, and as you can see, I love this poem. It's a great poem to use even at the beginning of the school year, right? So they would write two more questions. We label them questions 5 and 6, and then again, discuss with your partner your questions, and then attempt to answer them based on evidence from the text. And then as a class, we would go over a couple of those more high value questions, like asking, what does "see how the world dances above my eyebrows" means? So what I really love about this poem is that on this third reading here, they get to a point.
This continent plus that continent, together, on y va, ensemble, vamos juntos side of me. The city that said, me gustas así, don't come down anything, don't tame nothing. Pa qué?
Right, so we stop right there. And I love this poem because we get to this point where most students, if they do not speak Spanish, they are at a point where their comprehension is now broken down. And so we talk about the fact that when your comprehension breaks down, and if you don't speak Spanish, then your first question better be, what does that language in line 9 mean? And then as a good reader, you try to fix that. You don't keep reading, you fix it. So they take out their phones, their devices, they do some translations, and then they figure out what this means. They translate it on their paper, and then they have that discussion about the meaning of the text. But first, we stopped to ask that question. Wait, what does "pa qué" mean? What does "me gustas así" mean? And so I really love this poem because it, for a lot of students, causes their comprehension to break down because of the language barrier. They would write their two questions. Of course, they better be about the language if they don't speak Spanish. And then we would keep going this way. We would then do the same thing in the last part of the text. And then finally, I would have them respond to a constructed response item about this particular poem. Now, this particular session has opportunities for students to show them an exit ticket here. I also do another couple of demonstration lessons over questioning using a choice menu and level 1 and level 2 and level 3 questioning. Now, what I need you to understand is that the person asking the questions is the one doing the most thinking. And so here's a link to this presentation. Remember, this is not the whole presentation. I'm actually 15 seconds over already, my 15 minutes. But this is just meant to give you a little taste, a little teaser, so that maybe next time you see the full version of this training being offered, you might want to come on out and take the full version.